If you've ever faced rejection in the sync licensing business, meaning your tracks were ignored or just rejected from a music library altogether, this is going to be a video you don't want to miss. I love this story because it really puts things in perspective for us in this modern world. And I just love hearing these sort of stories of success after facing intense rejection. And the story I want to tell you guys about today is when the Beatles, otherwise known as the most popular band musical act in the history of show business, was rejected. And not just sort of passed over, harshly and cruelly rejected. And I want you to just listen to this and just remember, keep your own story in perspective as you go through this industry, because you're going to face rejection and you're going to face people ignoring your music, not being interested in working with you, or maybe even taking on your music and then kind of going to sleep on you. So this is just what we all have to deal with, especially in the music business. But this story in particular, I think, is so interesting because it happened to the most successful band on earth. And once you hear this, I think you'll realize that the rejection that you've gone through is not nearly as brutal as what these guys went through, okay? So 1962, the Beatles are gathering some steam over in the UK. Okay, they're getting some popularity. They're touring a bit. They obviously haven't broken onto the international scene, but locally they're doing very well. So their manager, Brian Epstein, is trying to shop a deal for them, trying to go out to the record labels locally to try to find a deal for them so that they can get a little bit more exposure into the world. They can get on the radio a bit more. They can tour a little bit more and get a little bit of a budget behind them so that they can kind of take their careers to the next level. So he's shopping around. Okay, now he finds that he's talking to many different labels at once, trying to shop many different labels, and I'll talk about all those in a bit. But the one that he gets to agree to come out and check them out at a sort of gig they're playing is Decca Records, okay? So they had a representative come out, check their live show out. He liked what he heard. He's like, yeah, these guys have something. Why don't we arrange to have them come out to our studios? And they called it a sort of an audition session. Basically, what they did back in those days is you didn't just necessarily play a live show. They also wanted you to come into a studio, a record label's studio, and record a couple of tracks and really just kind of see, can you guys record a song? Is this something that we can market? And they really want to just hear the final product. And so it was basically an audition session for a group that the label might want to sign. Okay. So here's where it gets fun. The trip ends up taking them 10 hours to drive to. Okay, they get lost on the way to this record label. They can't find it. It takes them 10 hours. They arrive super late at night. Okay, the next day they're going to record their audition session. Usually, what was traditional back then, it was 3 to 5 tracks. You would just do a couple of tracks, and if one of them was really great and they loved you as a band, they might actually use one of those tracks as your single to then push you initially on the label to see if it gets some traction. If it got traction, they would push you more, put some more resources into it. For one reason or another, the Beatles were asked to record 15 songs. Okay, if you've ever been in a recording studio, recording just one song takes a lot out of you. And this was back in the day, of course, when everybody was playing live all together. So I'm sure in the course of 15 tracks, Ringo screwed up a couple, or it wasn't Ringo, sorry, it was a Pete Best. Pete Best at that point probably screwed up a couple of fills. John, his voice probably went out. Paul, messed up something. There were probably all these different scenarios happening where they probably didn't just count off 1, 2, 3, 4 and nail the track the first time through. So we're talking about a grueling recording session, okay? 15 songs. That's brutal. And this is just for the audition, okay? This is just to see if this label likes what they hear. All right. So they finish up the session. I think at the time there were only 2 songs that they did, maybe 2 or 3 that were their original songs. Everything else were cover tracks. Many bands back then did a lot of cover tunes, especially when you were early on in your career. You were sort of getting yourself established, and one of the easiest ways to be a crowd pleaser is to play popular tunes that everybody knew. It still happens obviously today, but these days more bands play a lot more original music. But the Beatles played a lot of cover tracks, and they had a couple original ones. And this was very early in their career, so they didn't exactly have a large catalog of very strong tracks yet. They were still in their process of learning how to songwrite and create those great hit songs, right? So they leave the session, they're exhausted, wiped out. It takes an entire month for them to finally hear back from the record label. You can imagine how aggravating that would feel to drive 10 hours, spend all that time recording 15 songs and then literally go back home and just look at the calendar for a month and wonder what the hell happened. Did they like it? Did they not like it? We don't really know. A month later, they were told, no, we're rejecting you. We're not interested in signing the Beatles. But they didn't do it politely in probably the way that you and I have faced rejection in the sync licensing business. When we get our tracks rejected, usually what do you hear? Oh, it's just not what we're looking for at the moment. Thank you so much. It's not exactly applicable for us. Maybe right now we're a little bit swamped. We're not taking on new writers, or, maybe you just get ignored. They don't get back to you. Yeah, it sucks, but that's usually how you and I face rejection. Let me tell you how the Beatles, again, biggest band ever in show business, in the music industry, in entertainment, were rejected, okay? They were told two things. One, guitar groups are on the way out. This is what the label said. Maybe they were just trying to get off the hook and make it impersonal to say, yeah, you guys are good, but I don't know. We're just thinking that this sort of style of music is not really going to be popular in the future. Obviously, how wrong were they? Okay, so that's the first thing. But the second thing, and this is where it just is brutally just cutting into their esteem and their ego. The label reportedly said to them, the Beatles have no future in show business. Have you ever been told that? I sort of was told that in a way by my previous employer when I had a day job. My old boss told me I had no future because I wasn't growing with his company. But even with that, I've never been told, hey, Jesse, we're not interested in your music. And by the way, you have no future in sync licensing. You should just quit, give up, go get a day job, go do something else, go flip burgers. But sync licensing is not for you. You have no future in this, okay? I can almost guarantee everybody watching this, you've never been told that by a library, okay? Nobody's been that cruel, needlessly cruel to you to say, give up entirely. Maybe you have, but it's really not a very common thing for somebody to be that just brutal with somebody that they don't want to work with. And this is what the Beatles faced, okay? This was their story that they had to deal with. Now, in the course of also shopping to all these other record labels, not only were they brutally rejected by Decca Records, but they got rejected by 5 other labels as well, including Columbia Records, okay? 5 plus Decca and probably many more that we don't know about all said no thanks, or maybe they were ignored, or just whatever. We're not really that impressed, okay? Put yourself in the shoes of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison. What would you do? You're rejected by all these labels, including one that tells you not only is your style of music and the way that you're presenting it going out of style and just not interesting anymore, but this is an established record label telling you, the band, a newbie band, kind of an up-and-coming band, you have no future in this business. You're basically lightweight. You don't get it. Like, this is just not going to work out for you. Do you think you would have the fortitude, the chutzpah to basically thumb your nose at them and say, you're absolutely wrong, we're going to prove you wrong, and move past that and become the Beatles? We all think that that's what it takes. We think we have that in us to be able to push past that. But it's so easy to look back at these things in hindsight and realize, oh yeah, I'm so glad the Beatles did push past that to become and share all the incredible music that they did. They easily could have just slowly fizzed away, right? That's something like that you get especially as a band, as a group, and you all believe in yourselves, and you get this just like industry level cutting criticism like that. It is so easy to let that go to your head, go to your gut, and just start to kind of give up on things, lose a little bit of your excitement and stamina for your band and for your career, and then eventually just let it all kind of fizzle away. Because, you probably don't get instant results, obviously, especially after you hear something like that. It really makes you probably double think everything, double check and second guess yourself on your path of what you're doing with your career, right? For whatever reason, probably a little bit of craziness. You got to think about that. The Beatles were probably a little bit crazy at the time to say they're absolutely wrong. I know this is a record label. I know that they're established, and I know that they have qualified ears and qualified people listening to us, and they gave us a shot and told us that we were not only not right for them, but we were a waste of time. But even with all that in front of us, we believe in what we're doing, and we're going to march forward. Thank God they did, right? To become the hugest band in history. And wow, the egg on the face of Decca Records now, right? So take this for what you want to take it for, but you're not facing that kind of rejection. You don't have to make that difficult of a push through in those sort of pushback moments that you get, okay? You do have to push through something. I'm not going to discount the fact that you do face rejection, and you will face rejection and people ignoring you and falling asleep on you. But just keep this all in perspective for how hard it was for those that came before you and had way worse rejection and decided to not let that stop them. So I'm not saying that you and I are the Beatles, right? Okay, we have our own strengths and we have our own pathways that are going to be completely different than what they went down. But I want you to always, when you face those rejections and you get those, people ignoring you or not taking you very seriously, just keep this story in mind. Even the Beatles got rejected. Even the Beatles got told that they have no future in this industry. So you have a choice. Are you going to do what the Beatles did and push right past it and prove all the naysayers and the people that didn't give you a shot wrong? Or are you going to take that criticism very personally and take your ball and run home and be done with it? Choice is your guys'.